My name is Mara Ellington, 31 years old. I have the kind of job nobody can explain at Thanksgiving. Financial operations for a logistics company, where the spreadsheets are held together by rules and the people are held together by whoever answers the email first. That person was always me. Dependable, invisible, and available in the way streetlights are available. Always on, rarely thanked. My sister Brianna arrived 3 years after me and took up every room like oxygen. Pretty, persuasive, the type to balance a champagne flute and a lie on the same wrist. Her fiancé Trevor matched her energy. Handsome, glossy, charisma like cologne. Growing up, Brianna learned that someone would show up to rescue her. Somewhere along the way, I learned that someone was me. The bank alert hit at 9:07 p.m., the night before her wedding, while I was on the couch eating dry cereal and pretending I liked the quiet. $12,034.88 charged. Reception services. The venue name was familiar because I'd listened to Brianna gush about chandeliers the way other people talk about vows. For one dumb second, I thought, fraud. Then my stomach beat me to the truth. Years ago, when her card was frozen, I'd let her use my debit once. Just $100, just for today. We never changed the info. I forgot about it. She didn't. I called. No answer. I texted. Bree, did you use my... Her reply arrived before I could type card. Don't act surprised. You don't even have a life to spend it on. It wasn't a scream inside me. It was a click, like a lock that gives quietly and never goes back. I read the message again. The old choreography was already assembling. She uses, I swallow, she wins, I pay. Except I felt awake in a way I hadn't since Mom taught me to balance a checkbook with a pencil and a prayer. I opened my laptop and started gathering the bones of the night. Transaction IDs, vendor contracts, cancellation clauses. I called the venue first. I'm disputing an unauthorized charge, I said evenly, reading the numbers. They asked questions, some polite, some suspicious, but every call found its room inside my spine. Florist, lighting, DJ, catering. The midnight DJ tried to bro bargain. I read him his own terms in the tone I save for auditors. I kept notes, screenshots, confirmation numbers. Evidence is the only language chaos understands. At 1:42 a.m., I filed disputes with the bank and locked the account. At 3:11, I got the case-opened emails. At 3:37, I brewed stale coffee and recognized my kitchen at an hour it didn't deserve me. At 4:06, I found an autopay I'd forgotten, Mom's electric bill. I hovered, didn't touch it, not yet. By sunrise, every contract hung by its own fine print. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of unlearning. In the quiet between calls, I noticed the apartment looking back at me as mine, and not as a staging area for other people's emergencies. A stack of manila folders glowed on my bookcase, remembered suddenly as labels from other rescues. January groceries, Adam, 2 a.m., Toe, Bry, Mom Dental, shoeboxed proof that sometimes the past keeps its own receipts even when no one asks it to. At 7:42 a.m., my phone detonated. The family group chat, Taylor Fam Bam, turned red with panic. Mom, why is the florist saying we didn't pay? Adam, venue says canceled? Wath, Brianna, today is not the day for glitches. Fix it. Trevor, calling the manager. I made coffee I didn't want and watched the bubbles crawl up the chat like ivy. Aunt Clara, I can't believe this. Some people are jealous of happiness. Cousin Michelle, praying for peace, but wow. At 8:15, Mom called. I let it go. At 8:22, the knock started. Loud, fast, certain. I opened the door because I wanted to see their faces when the script missed its cue. Mom, lipstick, stiff-backed Sunday version of herself, pushed inside with Brianna storming behind her, veil shoved into a tote like a defeated flag. What did you do? Mom demanded, voice already at closing arguments. Brianna's fingers were claws around her phone. You ruined my wedding. I leaned against the door and studied them like line items. You stole from me. Brianna laughed, sharp, mean. I borrowed, like always. She flicked the air. You'll get it back. It was my savings, I said. You took $12,000. You don't even spend money, she snapped. You hoard it. For what? For cereal on your couch? There it was, the thesis statement of our family economy. My usefulness was the only currency I was allowed to hold. Mom sighed with theatrical exhaustion. You made a spectacle. We have guests flying in. You used me, I said, not loudly, because you were certain I wouldn't fight back. They stared like I'd mispronounced a family secret. Fix it, Mom said, and for a vivid, cinematic second, I saw my whole childhood lined up behind that command like dominoes. No, I said. Brianna blinked. You're jealous. I met her eyes. I'm awake. They tried everything. Insults dressed as concern, concern dressed as guilt, guilt dressed as scripture. I didn't debate. Arguments are invitations to re-enter the role. I set the invitation on fire. Finally, when the words thinned out, I gave them one sentence, the only one that mattered. You shouldn't use people just because you're sure they won't fight back. Then I closed the door. For a long moment, I leaned my forehead against the wood and listened to the building breathe. The silence felt unfamiliar, like a room after everyone leaves and the furniture remembers its shapes. I put my mug in the sink and checked the disputes again. Open. Pending. The vendors would reverse because corporations respect policy more than families respect boundaries. The group chat flared again. Traitor without the noun. Saboteur without the courage to tag me. I turned off notifications and let the apartment hold me. The ring of my phone tried to re-enlist me. I let it fail. On the table, the stack of old folders waited. I pulled one down, thumbed through the neat, polite proof of a decade of being on call. Gas money, security deposit spot cash, groceries when the transfer just hasn't hit. Tally marks I'd never totaled. I slid the folder back and whispered, not today. Then softer, not anymore. Outside, the city tuned itself to morning. A neighbor's dog sneezed. Someone's joist creaked like a tired joke. On my lock screen, one more text bloomed from Brianna. You'll regret this forever. I smiled, not because I was cruel, but because regret is what people feel when they realize the free labor has ended. I sat on the couch and finished the cereal from last night. The milk tasted like a sundae I owed only to myself. The apartment's quiet wasn't empty, it was mine. And as the first light striped across the rug, something steadier than anger took its place inside me. Records keep the past from lying. Locks keep the future from walking in uninvited. And I had both. The wedding still happened. Not the one with chandeliers and a saxophonist on the terrace, just the kind you can finish on your lunch break. By noon, a boomerang hit my feed. Brianna's left hand darting toward the camera, courthouse seal blurred in the background, captioned, "Married to my best friend, no matter what." Paper flowers clutched like a dare. Trevor smiled, the way people smile when they're losing daylight. The bridal party had shrunk to a few loyal faces, shiny with stress, holding coffee cups like lifelines. They posted from a Chili's later, limp nachos, a melted dessert, no speeches. In one photo, my mother stared at a candle like it could still give instructions. None of them texted me directly. They didn't need to. The family group chat bloomed into accusation without nouns. Aunt Clara. Family lifts, doesn't sabotage. Uncle Jim. Sad day. Mom. Some wounds don't come from strangers. 23 likes. 5 comments. I didn't tap to see them. I muted Taylor Fam Bam. Then I deleted it. The silence afterward felt wrong at first, like stepping off a moving walkway and misjudging the floor. My phone, unburdened by 100 buzzing notifications, sat heavy and plain on the coffee table. I studied my apartment with new eyes. Everything I owned had been bought for utility. A couch built to last, plates that could stack without chipping, a mattress older than my last vacation. I ordered a new mattress online on a whim. I added pillows that looked like they had opinions. I filled my cart with nothing I had to justify. When the deliveries arrived, the building manager said, "Big changes?" And I said, "A better back." He nodded as if I'd quoted a poem. I didn't post a thing. I cooked pasta, watched the steam lift like a benediction, and put dishes in the sink without hating the sound. The next morning, I woke at 6 out of habit, then refused to save anyone with the spare hours. I walked. The air was cool enough to pretend the city was kind. A dog trotted past with a bandana he didn't earn. By the time I returned, the messages I hadn't wanted found their way into my voicemail. Mom, you humiliated us. Adam, this isn't just about money. You broke her. Brianna, you will regret this forever. I let them live there, unplayed, unfed. Instead, I opened apps I should have closed months ago. Hulu, devices, 4, mine, Mom's, Brianna's, and a smart TV that said, Living Garmadam. I logged myself out, then everyone else, because generosity without reciprocity is just a slow leak. I removed my card from Uber Eats, the backup Brianna used whenever her account bounced, and canceled a family Spotify I didn't remember starting. I stared longest at the utility autopay. Mom's electric bill I had covered since January without naming it kindness. I set a reminder, 1st of next month, turn it off. Not to punish, but to stop pretending load-bearing was the same as love. I booked a last-minute cabin in Sedona, Red Rock and Hot Springs. I'd never touched because I'd always been too needed for weekends. I packed a small bag, 2 dresses, a swimsuit, a paperback that still smelled like the bookstore where I bought it. I left my work phone plugged in and face down, like a sleeping animal I wasn't responsible for. I told no one. Sedona was red and quiet in a way my body didn't know how to trust. The cabin's porch had a chair that creaked as if it had been waiting for a confession. In the hot springs, strangers didn't ask me why I was alone. They asked me if the water felt hotter at the jet. I nodded and didn't give them my autobiography. The second night, I watched the sun burn a clean hole through the horizon and felt the panic in my chest submit to the math of light. I didn't miss them. I thought I would miss the idea of them, the group text with a dozen laughing emojis, the holiday bake-offs, the illusion of a net. But I only missed the version of family I had manufactured and subsidized. The real thing had teeth. On Monday, I drove home with the windows down and a part of me rebuilt in the soft place behind my sternum. I stopped at a roadside market and bought peaches so ripe they bruised under their own perfume. Back at my apartment, the air tasted like the inside of a new book. I opened the bank app and created a second account. I named it Nothing Pretty. No one knew it existed. The first transfer felt like a small country declaring its independence without fireworks. They noticed the holes before they noticed the architecture. Brianna, why did Hulu log me out? Adam, is the gym card canceled? Says declined. Mom, the lights almost got shut off today. What's going on? I let their questions sit the way my questions had sat for years, unanswered, unpaid, unprioritized. I went to a pottery class and made a bowl that listed to one side because my hands shook when the instructor said, "It won't be perfect, but it will be yours." I went to a wine tasting alone and learned that I prefer wine that tastes like stones. I bought a dress with a color my mother wouldn't understand. I hung it in the closet and didn't save it for later. The first public shot across the bow came from cousin Michelle, who posted a blurry courthouse picture with a caption about true love surviving sabotage. 27 hearts, 3 prayer hands, 1 comment from a friend who wrote, "Some people can't stand to see others happy." I blocked Michelle, not because she mattered, but because attention is a currency, and I was done tipping. The family rebranded my refusal as cruelty. They framed my silence as proof. They told the story of a bitter spinster who had ruined magic because she couldn't conjure her own. I let them work the edges of that lie until they cut their fingers. Every message they sent sat on my phone like a stone in a jar, heavy but not lethal, proof of how much noise people make when the free labor stops. Then something shifted, a glitch in the script. Mom sent a meme of a cat falling into a bowl of popcorn with no caption, as if humor could grease the hinges. 2 days later, Brianna liked a photo of my new plant. Adam replied to an Instagram story with a lone fire emoji, and for a second it was 2015, and we were laughing about something small and unimportant. I didn't answer any of them, not because I was punishing them, but because I was learning to let quiet do what it does. Work noticed I wasn't leaking energy everywhere. I said no once and didn't explain. The office didn't implode. People found their own printers. I stayed until 5 and left at 5:10, which felt like robbing a train and getting away with it. The weekend after Sedona, I threw out the couch that had groaned under a decade of rewatching other people's crises and bought one that asked me to sit like I belonged to myself. I vacuumed and found exactly 14 bobby pins under the old rug, which is how you know a house has held women telling themselves it was fine. I almost believed it would stay quiet. It didn't. 2 weeks after the courthouse wedding, Brianna posted a photo of herself in a mirror, eyes glassy, captioned, "Still standing." The comments were thirsty with sympathy. At the bottom, Trevor typed, "Always." For the first time, he didn't look like a prince. He looked like a man whose kingdom had plumbing problems. That night, I opened a small wooden box on my shelf and found the paper I'd forgotten I kept. Old receipts, dog-eared note cards with careful tallies, rent, Bry, 2 months, grocery, mom, tow, Adam, and a faded printout of an email from 2018 where I wrote, "Hey, remember to pay me back for the hotel? No rush." The reply was a heart emoji, no money. I didn't feel righteous rage. I felt a tired, clean relief. Records keep the past from lying, about me, about them, about the shape of the debt we never named. The first of the month came. I turned off Mom's electric auto pay. My finger hovered for a breath that contained 29 years. Then I pressed the button. The confirmation email arrived and didn't accuse me of being a bad daughter. It said, "Change successful." That was all. In the quiet that followed, I booked a Saturday morning bus to a town with a farmer's market 3 stops away. I bought tomatoes that tasted like July, even though it was October. I watched a couple argue gently about basil and felt nothing but a small, grateful ache for how little of their story belonged to me. On Sunday night, as the sun dissolved into something tolerable, I wrote a list titled "What I Paid For" and laughed when the page couldn't hold it. Not for court, not for leverage, for inventory. For the part of me that had been called selfish when she was just tired. I wrote 2 a.m. airport ride, Adam 2019, and Breeze Boutique Hotel birthday, and Mom's dentist, and Brianna's emergency dress, and I didn't stop until my hand cramped. I closed the notebook and put it under the couch like a trap for ghosts. Monday morning, I woke before my alarm and didn't save anyone. I made coffee thick as consequence and opened the blinds. The city yawned. Somewhere, a neighbor began an argument that wasn't my assignment. My phone stayed still. No pings, no demands. I watered the plant Brianna had liked and said out loud, "You live here because I bought you." The plant didn't thank me. It just was. On my way out the door, I caught my reflection and startled at the way I looked, like someone who had not apologized for 24 hours. In the elevator, a kid with a backpack stared at me and asked, "Are you a teacher?" I said, "No, but I'm learning." At lunch, I ordered a salad that didn't pretend to be something else and texted Maya a photo of the crooked pottery bowl. She replied, "It's perfect because it lists toward you." I laughed into my fork. That night, as I washed the bowl by hand, because the dishwasher still made me feel wasteful, my phone buzzed with a notification I didn't expect. "Brianna tagged you in a photo." I didn't open it. I turned off the tap and listened to the last drops hit the metal like a code. I understood it without translating. They were going to keep reaching for the old doors. I had changed all the locks. 2 weeks after the courthouse wedding, I thought the noise might finally die out. But like most things in my family, the quiet came with strings. It started small, polite even. A meme from Mom, a cat video, no caption, like she was trying to pretend everything had been a misunderstanding. 2 days later, Brianna liked one of my photos, a picture of my new plant on the windowsill. The day after that, Adam replied to one of my Instagram stories with a single emoji. They weren't apologies. They were probes. Soft, subtle ways of asking, "Are you still angry? Can we pretend this never happened?" I didn't answer, not because I was mad, but because I wasn't playing anymore. Silence used to be my punishment. Now it was my protection. Then on a Tuesday morning, the receptionist at my office buzzed me. "You've got a visitor," she said. "Family." Said it's an emergency. My stomach tightened. When I walked into the lobby, Brianna was sitting there like she was waiting for brunch, hair curled, heels too tall for the linoleum floor. She smiled like we were still sisters who texted every night. "Mara," she said, standing up, "we need to talk." I didn't take her into my office. I led her outside to the edge of the parking lot where there was a single bench under a half-dead tree. She sat. I stayed standing. "I've missed you," she began. "Everything's been weird since the wedding. People keep asking what happened. I just want to move on." Her voice cracked, a little too practiced. Then she pulled a folded paper out of her purse and handed it to me. It was a legal notice, a defamation claim. Apparently, after losing her dream venue, she'd written a dramatic Google review calling the staff scammers, liars, and frauds. Now the venue was suing her for damages. "I need you to help me," she said. "Help how?" "Just tell them it was a misunderstanding, that you didn't mean for it to get canceled. They'll listen to you. You're good with words." I laughed once quietly. "You want me to lie?" "You don't even have to," she said quickly. "Just smooth it over. They won't check." I handed the paper back. "No." Her face hardened. "You're better than this." "I am," I said. "That's why I'm not doing it." She stared at me like she was trying to find the version of me she could guilt into obedience. But that woman had already packed up and left. So I turned and walked away. By the time I got back to my desk, my phone was already lighting up. Mom, then Brianna again, then Adam. Voicemails, missed calls, texts ranging from guilt to anger to pleading. I didn't answer any of them. That night, at 11:23 p.m., a message came from a number I didn't recognize. "Trevor, we'd never texted before. I don't know what they did to you, but they're terrified. And honestly, respect." I read it 3 times, not because it mattered, but because it was the first time anyone had ever acknowledged it. That I wasn't cruel, just done. The next morning, I woke to an email alert from my bank. Unusual login attempt detected. Someone was trying to access my old account, the one Brianna used years ago, the one I thought I'd already locked down. My heart dropped. I called the bank immediately. They froze everything, reset my credentials, added voice verification and multi-factor authentication. Nothing had been taken, but I could feel her fingerprints in the attempt. It was desperation disguised as coincidence. Afterward, I sat at my desk staring at the new login page. The words blurred until I realized I was shaking. Not from fear, but from the realization that they hadn't stopped trying. They were just getting sloppy. That afternoon, I drove to my storage unit, a small one on the edge of town that I'd rented years ago and forgotten about. Inside, it smelled like dust and paper. I found the old file boxes stacked in the corner. Bills, receipts, little scraps of proof from every time I'd bailed one of them out. I dug through until I found a small envelope labeled in my handwriting. IOUs, Bri. Inside were a dozen folded notes. "I'll pay you back Friday. Promise. Can you cover rent this time? I'll Venmo you next week. Love you. I'll make it up to you." She never had. I held those notes for a long time. For years, I'd kept them because I thought I'd need them one day to prove I wasn't crazy. But now I realized they weren't evidence for anyone else. They were proof for me. A record of all the times I'd been kind and all the times they'd mistaken that kindness for weakness. When I got home, the apartment felt different. Lighter, somehow. I took out my phone, opened a new note, and wrote a single sentence. My silence used to be their favorite weapon. Now it's mine. That night, I slept without my phone next to the bed for the first time in years. 2 days later, Mom texted me. "We should all sit down as a family, talk things out." Brianna followed with, "We've all made mistakes, but we're still blood." I stared at the messages for a full minute before putting the phone down. No reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and booked a weekend away in Flagstaff. No announcements, no pictures. Just me, my car, and a duffel bag. Flagstaff felt like a place that didn't know me, and that was exactly what I needed. I stayed in a quiet motel on the edge of town, the kind with a sign that still buzzed at night. I ate pancakes at a diner where nobody asked why I was alone. I spent hours at a local bookstore reading paperbacks I'd never buy, just because I could. On my second night, I found an old leather journal at an antique shop. Thick pages, faint ink stains, smelled like cedar and someone else's life. I didn't know why I bought it. But that night, sitting under a flickering lamp, I opened it and started writing. It wasn't therapy, it wasn't a confession, it was inventory. 10 years of invisible labor. Rent payments, grocery runs, car rides, emergencies, favors. All of it poured out of me, like someone was taking dictation. I filled half the notebook before sunrise. No anger, no tears, just clarity. Each line was a tally mark of the ways I'd been useful, the ways they'd made sure I stayed that way. When I finally put the pen down, my hands were cramped, but my mind was still. I realized something I hadn't before. I didn't need them to apologize. I just needed to stop waiting for them to. When I drove home Sunday night, I turned my phone back on. 38 messages, 11 missed calls, 3 voicemails. I expected more of the same. Guilt, pleading, manipulation. But this time, the tone had changed. Brianna's latest post was a surprise. A mirror selfie with the caption, "When you finally realize you've been taking the wrong people for granted." Her followers flooded the comments with praise. One even tagged me. "You're a real one," at Mara Ellington. I didn't respond, but I saw it. Then Adam texted me. "I think we owe you a real apology. I get it now. Mom's quieter. Brianna's different. We're not pretending anymore. If you ever want to talk, I'll answer." And then a final text from Trevor again. "They're scared of you, Mara. Not because you hurt them, but because you finally stopped letting them." I sat with that one the longest. Because he was right. They didn't fear me because I'd done something terrible. They feared me because I'd finally done something at all. The next morning, I woke to another email from my bank, login attempt from an unrecognized device. Someone was still trying to break into my old account. I didn't panic this time. I just called the bank, confirmed the attempt, and tightened the security another notch. Voice ID, new passwords, locked down every trace of shared information I could find. When I hung up, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was what they couldn't understand, that peace isn't the same as passivity. Peace can be a fortress too. That afternoon, I went for a walk downtown, stopping at a coffee shop I used to love. I ordered something indulgent and sat by the window, letting the noise of strangers fill the spaces my family used to occupy. For the first time in years, the silence wasn't heavy. It was earned. 2 days later, the messages started again, but softer now. "Mom, we should all sit down as a family. Brianna. We've all made mistakes, but we're still blood." I stared at the texts and thought of every "we" they'd ever used as a shield. "We're family. We'll fix it together. We need you." Every "we" was a way of saying "you'll pay." This time I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my travel app and booked another solo weekend. This time in a cabin near the mountains in Flagstaff. No group chat updates. No itinerary. No one knew where I went. The cabin was small and simple. One room, one bed, and a view of pine trees that swayed like they were keeping secrets. On the first night, I sat on the porch with a mug of tea and realized how long it had been since I'd heard only wind. I opened my journal and kept writing. Not about them, about me. I wrote about the first time I realized I was invisible, about the feeling of being useful but never seen, about how family can love you but still drain you dry. I wrote about the kind of forgiveness that doesn't require reunion. Page after page, I put everything down. It wasn't revenge, it was release. By the time I closed the journal, the air outside had turned cold and sharp. The stars looked close enough to touch. I whispered, "You don't owe anyone your peace." The trees didn't answer, but they didn't argue either. When I got home Sunday night, I turned my phone back on and waited for the inevitable flood. 38 messages, 11 missed calls. But this time the tone was different. Brianna had posted a selfie with a caption that stopped me cold. "When you finally realize you've been taking the wrong people for granted. Still learning. Still hoping it's not too late." Her followers flooded the comments. "Growth looks good on you. Proud of you. Own your story." One person even tagged me. "At Mara Ellington, you're the real one." I didn't react, didn't comment, didn't feed it. But I saw it. And for the first time, I believed maybe she'd actually meant it. Then Adam texted, "I think we owe you a real apology. I'm not saying I get it all, but I understand why you snapped. Mom's different. Brianna's quiet. You changed everything, Mara." I read it twice, not to savor it, but to make sure I wasn't imagining empathy for the first time in years. Then Trevor texted again. "They're scared of you, Mara. Genuinely scared. But it's not fear of you hurting them. It's fear of losing you completely." I stared at the message, a small laugh catching in my throat. Because it was true. For the first time, I was the one who could walk away. A few days later, another group chat appeared on my phone. Not the old Taylor Fam Bam one filled with memes and guilt. A new one. Just 3 names. "Mom, we were thinking of taking a trip. Just us. No drama, no expectations. You pick the place. Brianna, you choose when, where, everything. We'll cover the cost. We just want time together. Adam, no guilt, no asking for anything, just showing up." I didn't answer right away. I cleaned my apartment, cooked dinner, and sat with my journal on the floor until the candle burned low. Then, finally, I replied, "Fine, we'll go. But I pick everything, and the second it starts to feel like before, I'm out. No questions, no apologies." Brianna, agreed. Adam, same. Mom, proud of you for real this time. It should have felt manipulative, but it didn't. It felt careful, like they were the ones walking on eggshells now, not me. We ended up in Oregon. I picked it partly because none of us had ever been, and partly because it was far enough from Arizona to force everyone to leave their old habits behind. No quick visits, no forgot something at home, no escape routes. Just the four of us, me, Brianna, Mom, and Adam. A rented cabin outside Bend, surrounded by trees so tall they looked like they could keep secrets better than people ever could. When we arrived, no one really knew what to say. The air between us was too new. Mom kept opening her mouth like she wanted to speak, then closing it again. Adam chopped vegetables for dinner just to have something to do. Brianna looked at me like I was a stranger she was still deciding whether to trust. That first night, we sat around the fireplace in silence until Brianna finally said it. We were awful to you. She didn't look at me when she said it. She looked at the fire. I didn't realize how much I leaned on you, she continued. I thought you'd always be there. I thought that's what family was supposed to mean. Her voice broke. Mom started crying before she even spoke. I spent my whole life trying to hold everyone together, she said. I thought if we all stayed connected, it would fix everything. I didn't see what it cost you. She looked at me then. Fine doesn't mean okay, Mara, and you said you were fine for so long that I believed you. Adam spoke last, voice low. I didn't want to see it, because if I did, I'd have to admit I let it happen too. No one asked me to forgive them, and maybe that's why, for the first time, I actually wanted to. The fire popped. The silence after felt different, not uncomfortable, just honest. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel like it was pressing down on me. The rest of the trip wasn't perfect. There were awkward moments, long pauses, and old reflexes that tried to sneak back in. But there was no tension, no walking on eggshells. Mom cooked breakfast and didn't guilt me for sleeping in. Adam offered to clean up without waiting for someone to ask. Brianna covered the gas on the drive back without making a speech about it. Little things, but the kind of little things that mean change. On the final night, we played cards at the big wooden table by the fireplace. Mom drank wine and actually laughed, not politely, but deeply. Adam burned the garlic bread and blamed the oven. Brianna laughed until she snorted, and for a second, we all did too. It wasn't perfect. It didn't need to be. For a few hours, we weren't the family that broke each other, just people trying to start over. When the fire died down, Brianna looked at me and asked quietly, "Do you think we'll ever be close again?" I thought about it for a long time before answering. "I don't know," I said, "but I think we're finally being honest. That's closer than we've ever been." She nodded. Fair enough. And for once, she didn't argue. The morning we left Oregon, the air outside the cabin felt different. Cleaner, lighter, like something heavy had finally burned itself out overnight. We didn't rush to pack. No one barked orders. No one pretended we were fine. Mom made coffee while humming under her breath, some half-forgotten tune from childhood. Adam carried our bags to the car, whistling out of tune. Brianna walked the perimeter of the porch barefoot, staring at the mist that hung over the trees. When she turned back toward me, her face was softer. "Thank you for coming," she said. "You didn't have to." "I know," I replied. "That's why I did." She smiled, small, real, and that was enough. We drove home mostly in silence, the kind that doesn't need fixing. Every few miles, the forest gave way to open road, and I realized something simple but seismic. For the first time in years, I wasn't on alert. I didn't feel like someone waiting to be used. I was just a person in a car, headed home. Back in Arizona, life didn't transform overnight, but the air in my lungs felt different. I didn't rush back into the group chat. I didn't start picking up every call or replying to every hey. I kept my boundaries the same way you guard a healed wound. Not because it still hurts, but because it's proof of what you survived. Brianna texted once, "Thanks for giving us a chance." I answered, "You gave yourselves one." Mom sent a photo of a pie she'd baked. No captions, no guilt. Just look, I did something nice today. I hearted it and left it at that. Adam started sending small updates about work. Nothing dramatic, just got the promotion. Trying to be better. I believed him. No one asked for money, no one hinted at favors. The silence between us was starting to sound like respect. Weeks passed. I didn't realize how much space I'd reclaimed until I caught myself laughing out loud in my kitchen while a podcast played. It startled me. The sound, the ease of it. I was getting used to my own company. I kept writing in my journal, not about the family this time, but about what I wanted next. The pages filled with things that had nothing to do with survival, books I wanted to read, languages I wanted to learn, places I'd stopped allowing myself to imagine. One night I booked a ticket. Barcelona, 10 days. No plan, just me. When the confirmations email arrived, I didn't overthink it. I didn't ask anyone's permission or share it with the group chat. I just packed my bag. At the airport, I took a photo of my boarding pass against the sunrise and posted it to my Instagram story. No caption. Within an hour, Brianna liked it. Mom commented with a single red heart. Adam sent a thumbs up emoji. No questions, no guilt, no backhanded advice, just space. It wasn't approval, it was peace. Barcelona was chaos in the best way. Noise, color, life that didn't need me to fix it. I wandered through narrow streets and learned that I liked espresso even when it was bitter. I watched people argue in a language I didn't understand and realized it didn't matter. On my third night there, I sat on a bench overlooking the ocean. A street musician played something slow and aching nearby. I pulled out my journal and wrote one sentence. Freedom isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just not explaining yourself anymore. I closed the book and watched the waves until the music faded. When I came home, my apartment felt like mine, in a way it never had before. The couch was new, the walls bare, the air different. I made dinner for one and didn't apologize for the quiet. That evening, a text came through. It was Brianna again. Mom says you look happy in your photos. She's glad. I smiled. Tell her I am. Then another message followed. You know, I used to think you were cold, but I get it now. You weren't cold. You were tired of all of us. I typed and erased several replies before settling on one word. Exactly. She sent a heart, then nothing else. And that silence, for once, was perfect. Months later, I met them for dinner. My choice, my terms. A small place downtown, neutral ground. No one mentioned the wedding, the money, or the years we'd lost. We just talked. About work, about recipes, about the future. When the check came, Brianna reached for it first. I've got this, she said, and for the first time, I didn't argue. As we left, Mom slipped her arm through mine. Thank you for not giving up on us, she whispered. I didn't say anything. I just squeezed her hand gently. Forgiveness doesn't always need words. Sometimes it just needs proof that people finally learned how to stand on their own. Later that night, I stood on my balcony, the city spread beneath me like static. I thought about the version of me who'd once checked her phone every minute, who'd believed peace had to be earned by pleasing everyone else. That version was gone. Now, I didn't need validation or permission. I didn't need to rescue or be rescued. I was enough, exactly as I was. The wind moved through the trees below, soft and certain. I whispered to no one, I'm not surviving them anymore. I'm just living. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.